Times people come to me,
Hey, Allan, I want to do $1 million in revenue, $5 million in revenue.
perfect. What did you do last year? Or what are you going to do this year?
Oh, I don't know. It's like between 1 million and 1.5 million.
It's like, hey, you got to know your numbers. You got to be more specific about that, because when you are at 1 million and you're trying to get to 2 million, that's one of the things that I recommend that pest control companies work on. Hey, everyone, welcome to the Bug Bucks podcast. I'm your host, Allan Draper. I'm actually flying solo today. Eric is out with family stuff, some really cool family stuff going on. So, make sure as we get started here, make sure that you join our Facebook group. We've had a lot of people recently find our Facebook group through this podcast and asked to join it, and they've received a lot of value from that networking and stuff. So go to our Facebook group, Bug Bucks, BUGBUX, and become part of that community. Lots of great polls and surveys and questions and recommendations and referrals, also all sorts of stuff going on in there. And also make sure to check out our Bug Bucks Plus course, who's actually the sponsor of this episode. It's bugbucksplus.com. We just released a new course about inside sales that's getting a lot of attraction and attention. So make sure to check that out, bugbucksplus.com. I'm going to address kind of two general questions today. And I think that they're very time appropriate, and it's something that is on our minds this time of year. The first question is, what are the types of things that I should be focusing on this time of year that, where the weather's cooled off a little bit? We're probably in most markets not as busy as we're used to. And so what are some of those projects that I should be working on and some things that I should be focused on? And the second thing that we're going to talk about today is goals and planning. And those two are actually related, because that's one of the things that I recommend that pest control companies work on this time of year. So let's get into it. So if you're kind of trying to figure out, as owners of businesses, we've always got something to work on. And if you're not deliberate about the projects and the tasks that you're taking on, then fires are going to happen and they're going to take your time. So this time of year, especially as you should have slowed down, depending on your market, you're not as busy this time of year as, during the spring and summer. Make sure that you have a list of things that you want to take on. And I'm going to talk to you about some things that should be on that list. One thing that we do at Proof is we don't make any systemic or long-term or procedural changes from April 1st through September 30th. So what we do instead, we don't ignore things that come up by any stretch of the imagination. So something comes up and we're like, oh, our training manual needs updated, has some old information. And we found it because we're busy treating technicians that time of the year, and we came across something. So we have this master list that goes on the master list to be reviewed starting on October 1st. So make sure that you have a list of things that need to be done. A general idea, though, if you're wondering what you should be doing this time of year, it's going to be a lot of things that you don't necessarily want to do. It's going to be more of the important, not urgent things. And some of them can be tedious, they can be somewhat boring, but they're very important, especially to a growing company. So let's talk about some of those things. I've mentioned training. Training, working with employees just generally, and doing reviews and feedback and follow-up. While you want some of that communication going on throughout the year, this is a great time to put systems in place. And generally speaking, any type of system or protocol or procedure that your business relies on should be supplemented and reviewed this time of year. Going back to the personnel, that's something that you can take a lot of time with. You can have longer review sessions, longer feedback sessions, longer training sessions this time of year that you can during June or July. So make sure to take advantage of that. Make sure that you're giving those people that may felt a little disconnected or haven't felt like they've had that one-on-one time with their leaders. Make sure that you really compensate for that this time of year. And as part of that review process, make sure that you're retaining the best people, that you have the type of people that you're going to continue to build your company with. So that's reviewing feedback sessions and training with your personnel. As part of that, it's a great time to create an ongoing training and review schedule for the year, because in June, July, you're not going to be wanting to come up with that system. But if it's something that's on the calendar where it's like, hey, we're going to have a 15-minute review session with our technicians, maybe 2 touch points a summer, maybe a summer, or maybe 3, but those are going to not be put on the calendar in May, June, July. They're going to be put on the calendar and scheduled in October, November, December, whatever. So make sure that those are getting on the calendar, because if they're on your calendar and you have a system in place that you created during the growth season, as we like to call it, then you're going to be able to make those happen a lot more easily. All right, this is not going to be a fun recommendation for a lot of people, but it's a great time to do some cleaning, literal cleaning of your office space, the vehicles, your inventory cabinets, doing your equipment checking, your equipment maintenance, all those types of things that are not fun. I get it, but it's a great time to do that, and you can do things that kind of make it fun. Create a half a day where everybody comes into the office. You have music playing, maybe there's some food, and you have stuff broken up into specific time increments. So it's like, hey, first hour, we're going to do a large team meeting, get everybody pumped up. We're going to talk about the schedule and what today's going to look like. The next 30 minutes, we're going to be working on our backpack sprayers. We're going to be doing, training on maintenance, on the proper use, making sure those nozzles they're cleaned out and they're all functioning properly. I know they get clogged and, sprays start going in all sorts of different directions. Then after that, we're working on B&Gs and kind of get a checklist for what that cleaning and maintenance schedule is going to look like. At that same time, you want to make sure you're reviewing your maintenance schedule throughout the year. I've gone on ride-alongs with folks, and the seals on their B&Gs were bad and they were leaking, and the nozzle hadn't been maintenance properly and was spraying in a bunch of different directions. And a lot of times when we're right in the middle of the summer, we just put up with that stuff because we have 15 more stops to hit or whatever. And so we want to make sure that there's a system in place where it's like, hey, every Friday or every other Friday, we're checking and making sure. A great way to test that is to make sure that you're triple rinsing your backpack sprayer, your B&G, your power sprayer if you have a rig attached, triple rinsing those, and just use water to test and train. Training is another aspect that it's great to do it at that time when things aren't super busy and you're working through equipment. As leaders, I think we take for granted that people know everything that we know. So during this time, make sure that you're looking at, hey, how do I mix Termidor properly? What's the right way to do that? What's the right way to agitate my equipment? What's the right way to make sure to triple rinse? What are the questions about the label? All those things that seem so burdensome if they were to happen in the middle of the summer, it's a great thing to talk about and to create that connection with your technicians and to re-emphasize the core components of your business. For us, safety is a really big deal. And so we have to make sure to put our money where our mouth is with safety. And we do that throughout the year, but we're especially doing those types of trainings, making sure equipment's working, technicians are mixing things properly during that during that period of time. Um, Anything systems or procedural related, protocol related, it's a great time to review. Approach your systems especially with this mentality of, I'm not going to just continue to do something the way it's always been done because it's the way it's always been done. That's actually a great reason to review it. For example, if you have certain phone scripts for either CSRs or inside sales representatives, this is a great time to review those. Hey, why are we going through the process like we do ABC? Why do we say this first, that second, and that last? Question it. I'm going to give a plug to the Bug Bucks Plus course because we just dropped a course that is perfect on this, that goes through scripts and has all this information about inside sales that can help you make sure that your inside sales program is on track. But whatever the system is, have that mentality of why. Ask people why a lot. And when you do that, you're going to get a lot of buy-in from your team because people are going to, whether you ask them or not, they're thinking the same thing. And when people understand why they're doing something, it changes their their motivation to do it and their focus. So if they know, hey, the reason why the script is like this is because we've tested it and I'm more likely to close a sale, then they're going to continue to do it because they're usually commissioned or there's some sort of incentive for them closing sales, or at least there should be. So there's so much for you to work on. There's probably hundreds of different specifics. But the most important part is that you're focusing on what your business needs. And a great way to identify what are the things that my business needs to work on this time of year, I think the number one question that leads you to that answer is, what were the biggest pain points? So number one, as I'm deciding what procedures, what systems need to be revamped in my business, answer that question. What were the biggest pinpoints? Number two, what are the biggest hurdles to growth? So as I'm trying to scale my company, or we're trying to start a new initiative, maybe you're adding a termite program. What are the hurdles that you're going to run into or that you already have? And how can you clear the path? How can you be doing work in October, November, December, the colder months, that will clear the path for streamlined business May, June, July? This is a great question to bring up in our Facebook group. Go to that group. You can create a poll or a survey, however you want to do it, and ask people, hey, what are the hurdles to achieving X? For example, I'm at $400,000 annual revenue. I want to get to $1 million annual revenue. What are the systems that I need in place to clear the path in order to do that? Touching on our second point, this is a great time of year to be focusing on goal setting and planning. I'm going to throw into that group budgeting. And when you're making plans and you're setting goals, there are three main questions that you have to answer as a leader. Number one, where are we? So if I have a goal for gross revenue, let's use the example I just stated. I have a goal to get to $1 million in top line revenue by the end of 2024. And that's our goal. And it's kind of easy to break down. So it's a nice round number. I want to get to $1 million, very common goal for companies at different stages. Some super early, some get to it early, some takes them 5-10 years, perfectly fine. So that's question number one. Question number one is, where are we? Question number two is, where are we going? And question number three is, how do we get there? So question number one, where are we? I'm at $400,000 annual revenue. Question number two, where do we want to go? I want to get to $1 million in annual revenue. Question number three, this is going to be the toughest spot to be in. This is going to be the toughest question. How do we get there? Usually, and keep this in mind when you're creating goals and plans, usually it's going to involve more than one facet of your business. A lot of people say, okay, well, $1 million in revenue, it's all about marketing. Not true. In order to do $1 million in revenue from 400,000, first of all, you're more than doubling the size of your company. So what does that mean? Now there are efficiencies of scale in there, but let's say that it's going to take you twice the number of techs. If you currently have one tech or one and a half with you doing some time, then you're going to need two techs or three techs to get there. So there's obvious operational corollaries with increasing your revenue from 400,000 to $1 million. It's also going to affect other areas of your business. Obviously, marketing, sales. Um, how does that change our routing? How does that change our geographic service area? Are we, in order to get to $1 million in revenue, are we adding any new services, any new service offerings? So when you're going through this process, make sure that you understand those three questions. One, where are we? Two, where are we headed? And three, how do we get there? You'd be surprised at the number of companies that don't ever like get to the point where they're very confident about where they are. It's like, hey, a lot of times people come to me, hey, Allan, I want to do $1 million in revenue, $5 million in revenue. Perfect. What did you do last year? Or what are you going to do this year? Oh, I don't know. It's like between $1 million and $1.5 million. It's like, hey, you got to know your numbers. You got to be more specific about that, because when you are at 1 million and you're trying to get to 2 million, you know exactly what it takes to get to 1 million because that's what you're doing. Just connect the dots now. Just make sure that you know, hey, that's actually what we're going to do this year. Be surprised how many people are just have no clue. Top line revenue, people are going to know more. But like if it's a question of, hey, I want to do a 30% net profit margin, totally doable in pest control. Totally doable. It's like, okay, where are you at right now? Oh, well, I think we're between 10 and like 20. That's a huge range. If you know specifically, hey, I'm at 15%, so I'm like halfway there. Let's figure out what we have to do to close the gap. Let's talk about specific costs that we're going to decrease in order to help that net margin, and specific and actionable ways that we're going to increase our marketing and sales to increase the top line to help with that net margin. Budgets. I'm going to talk about budgets and kind of just some more general ideas about planning and wrap up here. But make sure that with whatever your initiative is for 2024, that there is a budget component to it. Very few companies can say, hey, I'm going to hit a top line of $1 million in revenue, regardless of what budget, what budget I have to do that. It's just not feasible. So, because any company in the world could, if I have a $10 million budget, I could get to $1 million. But most people in that situation aren't working with that. So the trick is, as part of the process to answering question number 3, how are we going to get there? Make sure that you're cognizant of your budget. And this is true of any goal and any initiative that you might plan. There is a budget component to it that needs to be identified and planned out. Think of key indicators. Don't worry about every single dollar that your company spends. If you have an initiative that's going to be marketing driven, increase top line revenue to $1 million, it's going to have implications in other areas and with other line items. But number one is it's going to affect your marketing budget for sure. But am I going to pay $1,000 to acquire a customer that brings in $600 in annual recurring revenue? Probably not. So make sure that you understand those key indicators. If it's marketing focused, cost per customer acquisition has got to be up there. You got to know how much you're paying to acquire a customer. And you could also, another cool KPI would be, what's my ratio of cost per customer acquisition to total contract value? Whatever your initiative is, identify those key parts of the budget that it's going to directly affect top line revenue. Another one that you're going to want to think about is going to be, what's the cost? What's my gross profit margin? So how much is it costing me to perform a service? A lot of times it's tough to dig out of a hole if your service is, 80, 90% of your total revenue. Adding more services isn't going to allow you to dig out of that hole. You're going to have to figure out and start with, hey, how do I get my cost of goods sold, my cost of service down? So there's some kind of high level ideas. The purpose of this is not for me to address every specific concern or every specific initiative that your business should undertake. The point is for me to get you thinking about your business. I don't know your business. I don't know the specifics of what it needs. I don't know the specific personnel needs that you have. I don't know if there's any legal issues or if there's any regulatory issues that you've run into with the Department of Ag. So as I'm talking, I want you, and if you need to go back and re-listen to a couple of the topics that I covered with this in mind, but I need you to focus on, okay, what's the corollary to my business? Take these principles of working on things that are important and not urgent, taking time to focus on systems and protocols, doing things that throughout the year has been really easy for you to push to the side because you had a customer that left you a 1-star review or you had a technician quit on you. What are those things for your business? Your business is very unique. And so you're going to be, as the business leader and the business owner, you're going to be in a very unique position to know exactly what your business needs. So just because I'm giving examples of specifics that you could work on or specific goals, I'm not saying that those are appropriate for your business. Only you would know that. But take what I've shared and use it as a sample or an example to take what you know about your business, apply it to some of these principles that I've talked about, and come out with a solution of things that you should be working on, um, and goals that you're going to be working toward. Here's my last thought: don't settle for really low goals. Set something that's going to push you. I would rather push toward a goal that you do want it to be achievable, but look around. There's lots of companies likely that have achieved the goals that you're after. So you do want it to be achievable, but make it push you. If you have something that really pushes you, you're going to get team buy-in, and there's going to be some buzz around the office. And pest control, I say a lot that it's not a very sexy business, and I love it. I love it that it's not. But there's still ways that we can, have a lot of fun with it, get team member buy-in, and really scale our pest control companies. So whatever your goal is, do me a favor and add 10, 20, maybe 30% to it. If you end up missing your goal, but you push yourself, it's likely that you're going to achieve more than you would have if you didn't make those adjustments to it. So you can do it. This is a little bit of Allan motivation. Start with how far you've come in your business. Even if you're just starting your business in the last 6 months, you left your job and you're just hanging a shingle and you're getting rolling. Look how far you've come. Just taking that step alone is huge. 90+% of people will never do it. And you've done that. So take that motivation, take those small wins that aren't so small after all, and use it to get to where you want to be in 2024. You can always find me, reach out to me on Instagram. I'm at Real Allan Draper. Make sure if you have a colleague, a coworker, a potential business partner, an actual business partner that could benefit from this podcast, one of the greatest things that you can do to say thank you is to share this with them. Even if it's just like, hey, we want to focus on our goals this year. Allan was talking at goals at minute 18 or 19, and just have them listen to that specific part. That would mean a lot to us, and I'm sure it'd mean a lot to them. So thank you for listening. Make sure to go to our Facebook group, Bug Bucks, That's BUGBUX. And we'll catch you next time.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please show your support by subscribing and leaving us a 5-star rating. Thank you, and we'll catch you on next week's episode.